Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, I bring in our patient, as I call them once in a while, by letting them know that there's a couple of things that I honor from them, and I want to thank them and honor them for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, and that is their time. Time is precious. And the fact that Eileen is coming and spending some of this precious time with us, I want to honor her about that. And the other is her precious, powerful journey. The journey is that force that created her, that give her a voice, give her some things that she has accumulated as a process that she has gone through. Those things are wisdom, knowledge, insight. And we want to have access to that. And she's coming and she's allowing us access to that. And so we want to honor her and thank her for coming and giving us access to that so that you and I can become better human spirits while we are here on this planet. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. I have this wonderful question that I always ask everyone when they get to this space is how do you serve mankind? Because my heart is I believe that everyone needs to understand that we are here to first go through the first part of the journey for themselves, and the other part is the interdependent journey, and that is to reach back and to help each other. How do you serve mankind?
I serve mankind by being funny, by showing up. That's it, I wish there was something bigger and greater, but that's my purpose, to bring laughter, to bring joy.
Excellent. That is actually a noble piece as far as life, because I tell people that laughter is one of the most powerful things that we will have in our life. Laughter is, I've seen, Eileen, laughter heal people. I've seen in my life, I remember one time in my life, I'll give you an example. I was going through such a hard time, and I was at a conference, actually we were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we were standing there, and this preacher, it was a big conference, thousands of people, and he comes up and he gets on stage, and he begins to laugh. Thousands of people. He just starts laughing and laughing and laughing. We expect him to get up and preach. And all he did was laugh. And he kept laughing, and all of a sudden there's laughter, spurts of laughter all over the stadium. And everyone eventually this whole stadium is just in justice, laughing and so forth. And I came there with all kinds of problems, if you will, in my mind and head and whatever. In a couple of minutes, I didn't remember any problem I ever had. But what I did understand was after I finished laughing and came out of there, it was a couple of hours later, all the problems that I had are all gone. Every single one of them changed as a result of just laughing. So I do know, I have a personal testimony of the power that is embodied in that state of laughing. So one of our customers, because I want to go in deeper into that stuff, we're going to talk a lot about that because, as I said, there's a lot of power in it. One of our process or the state that how we handle this thing, because as people enter onto this planet, the very first places that we visit when we get here is the family. Talk to me about your family, because I usually start there because it's where we are given birth, if you will. Our belief, our thought patterns, our relationship skills, all of it begins there. What was your family
My family was hysterical. Right there, it was, the generational trauma in my family was huge, and I will tell you, laughter was not a part of the house I grew up in. Both of my parents were children of Holocaust survivors, first generation American. So, we hear a lot about that these days, about the struggle of first generation Americans. And think back, to those days, first generation American, growing up in the Depression, having survived the Nazis, their entire default was scarcity and fear. And that's what I was taught. There's never enough, and people are out to get you, because that's what they had lived. It
Yeah.
wasn't make believe. So I really was taught to be scared about everything, to not really have an original idea, to be one of the pack, and to be seen and not heard, to not really show up for myself, to not make waves. And, my parents were smart. They were educated. They were of that generation that came here, and, the families wanted better. But my father's side, my grandfather survived the concentration camp and survived, which we know those people had to be very tough, the strongest of strongest. My mother's side fled. Her parents were able to get out, and their entire families died, so they were alone.
Wow.
So I had a father who came from, a side of, for lack of a better word, a son of a bitch, right, that was able to survive in those camps, and a mother who was raised by people who were scared of everything and fearful and guilty because they fled and survived. And that combination led to a lot of trauma in my life. And I'll give you a story about, it would even manifest. Even when we were living the American dream, I have 3 sisters, we'd be playing Barbies, living in suburbia. We were next to the original town in Long Island in suburbia. And, playing Barbies, we would do something like build Barbie houses. And I was always kind of, I didn't realize it, but a leader, an innovator. I would always like first scour the house for all the materials, get a big pile, and then build the house. And my sisters would, and I'd want to pool the resources and build together and connections. And my sisters would complain to my mother that I was bossy and I was stealing the best stuff and I didn't give them a chance. And my father would agree. And I was told to play nice. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong but try to make it better. So I was taught I was a bully because I had different ideas, different way of seeing things. And, I tried to elevate the situation differently. So that's kind of the house I grew up in, right? That you're seen and not heard. You don't have interesting ideas. You don't, you try to fit in as best as you can so you don't get hurt.
And how did you, with that particular program, if you will, that they're telling you this is how you ought to be and so forth, how did you relate to others outside of your family? How did that affect your relationship with others outside of the family?
It had 2 kind of almost polarized effects. One was I wanted to create a different family than my family. So I trusted everyone. Anyone showed me any interest, gave me anything new, a new idea. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't, the kind of situation, the chaos that I grew up in. I ran to them. So,
Yeah.
I aligned myself with friends, family, a lot of times the wrong people, right? But I would run to them. So the other part of it, well, actually, so the point is I learned how to build community, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. I knew I had to get outside of my house. I knew there was something else besides this existence. So I learned how to be a member in community, how to join things, how to be on teams, because those were sanctioned activities. If I was
Yeah.
going to the swim team, the Girl Scouts, the youth group at the temple, I was allowed to be out of the house. It was excusable. So I became a community member, but I really, at the same time, didn't know who to trust or, I was a tool in a way, right? People can manipulate me, and I was always trying to prove my worth because I felt I didn't have any at home.
Yeah. That's a tough thing to do at such a young age when we don't feel our worth. Anyone can come and show us what we are worth, and we would be able to be led away to whatever that individual wants us to do. And so, yeah, it's a tough place for a child, a young individual to be and be a part of and to grow up. And as you're moving through life and you're heading in, and now you're looking at college, and that's always a big conversation when one gets there because you're moving forward into life, you're heading towards independence, if you will. And what kind of conversations were you having with your family, but mainly with yourself? What was it in high school that was propelling you to the direction that you took?
Escape and survival. There were no conversations with my family. Literally, I joke, I was the dumb one in my family, right? All my other sisters were smart. So I grew up in New York State. You got the state college app. There were 5 state schools. I looked at a map. I was living in Long Island. What was the furthest away? Buffalo. It was the 1970s, it was a 9-hour drive, no
Yeah.
surprises. That's how I chose my college. How far could I get away from my family? Seriously. I knew I would go to college. Like I said, that was the immigrant mentality, my parents' education up and better. But there was no conversation. There was a state school. There was one application. I didn't even go on tours. Like I said, I was blessed. One of my friends took me with their family on tours, and that meant I saw the colleges they were seeing, not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Talk about that lack of worth. I'm on your tour. It's not about me. But my parents did not take me on one college tour. My father had died by that point, so it was just my mother. But the point of it being, that's why I chose college. How far away can I get from Long Island?
Now, let me talk a little about your father passing. How did it affect this young girl, having dad not being there? How impactful was that in your life?
Yeah.
Because you
So,
still wanted to run.
my father died when he was 46. I was 17. He died of a massive heart attack. So here one day, gone the next. And I can only answer this question, Ken, because now, I like to say he died at 46. I'm 64. Look at that symmetry. And I finally have some real perspective on it. My father was a bully for me, an aggressive man. So at the time, it was a huge relief. I had guilt about him dying, but it was a huge relief that he wasn't oppressive and in that house for me. You know, I was 17, being 64. I have learned to forgive that man who was angry and mad and didn't know how to connect to me. I don't know what he would have become. I do wish I had, at the time, known more about his professional journey. He embodied professionally a lot of the principles that I love. He worked for GE. He was an innovator. He worked on some of the products. I mean, I've seen a lunar launch. He worked on pieces of the lunar module. He was an engineer. But at the time, they were so busy telling me I was the dumb one or I wasn't being noisy and, that I couldn't enjoy anything. So it gave me some freedom, but it was also very much of a lifelong journey to find that peace. And, you said it early on, that's the place they installed the buttons, right? That's
Yeah.
where we grew up. That's where we became who we are. As it turns out, when you grow up in that kind of environment, once I could forgive my father, the real impact was my mother who didn't protect me from him. Where was she? Because she was right there. So, my father leaving changed, dying changed a lot, but it was really my mother staying that continued to erode my self-worth.
Yeah, I had the same phenomenon with my parents. My dad he had did something that hurt me, and I hated him for doing it, and I hated my mother for allowing it to be done.
Took
And as
me
I look
took
back,
me
there's
years to
nothing
see
much.
that side of it.
Yeah, and there's not much she could have done because I look back at it, and there are some dynamics going on there as well. And so age and time give you some insights into their relationship as well. So yeah, it takes
Yes.
time.
And as we go through this, I'm sure we'll touch on that fact that at a certain point, no matter whether she could have done something, excuse my language, I do use rough language. I'm a grown ass adult and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what happened. I have to take responsibility. And that's kind of that moment of enlightenment and trauma when I say, no, this is on me, no matter what they did.
Yeah, it has all of that stuff has a time shelf where we have to deal with it, and we have to grow up, if you will, and be the adult in the room it's a process of our development, and forgiveness is a big part of that. And we have to be, if you're interested in healing, you have to be the one that do the forgiveness, and regardless of whatever and however and all the other stuff. And I always tell people that a mom and dad, whatever they did, have a expiration date. And so when people start whining to me about mom and dad, this mom and dad, I'd look at them and says that expired. That date has expired a long time ago. That's stale milk, as I would tell them. That's stale milk. But
You,
here you are. And that's why I asked that question about the purpose of us going to college and stuff. Where did we go? Because it tells a lot of our situation and our mindset at the time. And I cannot tell you how many people were just running, just to get the hell out.
yeah, I think I'm so unique. I have such a good answer. It wasn't academics. It was like, get me out of this town,
Yeah,
and it's your first opportunity. I just want to say, I just want to pick up on one thing you just said that I think is so critical, and we can come back to it, but I just want to bookmark it. You said, if you were interested in healing.
yeah,
If you were interested, because I think that's a lot of the story of the family, historical, hysterical. My sisters, I have 3 sisters, we're all 2 years apart. I can't speak for them, but from my knowledge, they're not interested in healing, right?
yeah.
That drama, that chaos cycle, that's what gives them purpose and reason. And then, you become further and further apart from your family of origin when you operate in the world differently.
Yeah, I've worked in a skilled nursing facility. This phenomenon baffled me, but it scared me as well. I had the opportunity to talk to many people that were in their 80s and 90s and stuff like that, in their latter days, if you will. And many of them did not even disconnect from the programming that they have had all through their lives. And it was a fascinating thing to observe and to be a part of it, and but also very painful to watch and realize that many of them didn't even know who they were. And from the conversations I was having with them, it broke my heart. And I realized that they never really wanted to know who they were. They just was happy with what they accomplished and what they did. And that was good enough for them.
Yeah.
So it is, if you want to, because as you said, a lot of people like the drama, just love it. And without that drama, it's a part of their identity. And I tell people one of the lies that they program us to believe is that the job is your identity. And
Mm,
I would tell them that is not true. A job is a job. We are souls that are here on this planet, and there is no soul that I know of that came here to do a job. I believe every soul came here to accomplish an assignment
mm,
that has been given to them. And I'll give you guys an example of that very clearly in the life of Jesus Christ with his disciples. He's walking on the beach, and the fishermen and their job were fishing. They're doing their job, and you know, and he comes to them and he says, "Hey guys, this is very strange comment. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." Very strange comment for an individual to make, a bunch of guys who are fishermen, who are doing their job. But these guys must have hit the window, if you will, or hit the ceiling, as they looked at that job that they were doing and figured out, hey, I can't go anywhere. I'm not going to make any more money, number one, or something, because they dropped their net from what we read and they bailed. Like, they just had enough. They said, no, I'm out. And they followed this man. So they left their job and followed this man to become fishers of men, that they don't know what that terminology meant, but they got an opportunity to figure it out eventually. Many of them died some horrible death as they
mm.
became fishers of men. So your identity is not tied up in your job. Don't let them lie to you with that. Don't let them lie to
or
you.
your possessions or
Yeah.
your accomplishments,
Yep.
right? It's
None of
tied
that.
up in your deeds. It's in your deeds. It's
Yes.
what you do when you have nothing.
Yeah. What happens when you lose your job? And I tell people your profession or your assignment is ever changing, and when you have located it, it moves and changes. And when it changes, you learn how to be grateful. It puts you in a state of gratitude. You're constantly, and that walk of faith is available to you because you don't know. These guys didn't know that it was going to lead them to a cross where you're going to be crucified upside down and all these different things. They didn't know it was going to lead them to a cross, to a path where they're healing sick and making blind people. They did not know, but they were walking by faith, accomplishing their assignment, just like you and I are called to accomplish our assignment. So do not allow those things, those lies, to keep you in that space, which is really
Well, more
all
than
it
those
is.
lies, that programming.
Yeah, it's a program that, and it's a very powerful program because there's a certain degree of security that they tell us that you have within that job, but that's not true because if that corporation decides to fire you, okay, that's a different type of thing, but many of them have done that. So here you are, you took off and you ran to school. What degree did you get as you ran out of there? And how did you adapt once you are free, distance wise? Because distance means nothing, but you're free in your mind as far as distance from the family and dad's past. And how did you manage yourself there?
Who's the great philosopher? Maybe it was Camus that said, oh, maybe it was Confucius. Wherever you go, there you are, right?
Yeah,
Doesn't matter
I
how
heard Bob
far you
Marley
go.
sang that too.
You bring yourself. So I got lost totally. I love the freedom, the independence, and I love to tell the story that my mother would call. Right, it was pre-cell phones for all those youngins out there, and you still had a wall phone. And my mother, being trying to be a good mother, would call me every Sunday night, and every Sunday night we would go to a bar downtown. Every town had one, called the library. And I had a roommate who was like a Christian fearing woman, and she hated to lie. And I'd be like, just tell her I'm at the library. You're not lying. You're just not saying it's a bar. So, I went months without talking to my mother. And it took me a long time. I didn't really find my path. First of all, I found that I had a brain, which I did
Yeah.
not know because, as I said, my older sister was brilliant. So I spent most of high school just copying her material and not doing anything, right? We shared a bedroom, so all her old papers were in the closet. I'd sneak in, copy them, make them my own. And, I learned that, you can only party so much. And then there's the brain, right? And you're sitting and, to this day, I wish that marketing interested me. I wanted to be a news anchor. But, I got interested, and it really happened when I was traveling my junior year. I took a semester abroad in London, and I traveled all of Europe. First time I'd been out of the country. I really saw, social workers and the underbelly of society, and, people living on the streets and, in all big cities, and homeless populations. I got to experience firsthand universal medicine in Scotland. I had to go to the emergency room. I had a kidney stone. I had so much pain. I didn't know what it was. And so that whole experience led me after my junior year to really formalize my degrees, and I got a degree in psychology and community mental health. The psychology degree was like, oh God, I'm going to figure out what was so wrong with my family and fix
Yeah.
myself. That never happened. And the community mental health was the other side of me where I ran to. I like community. I like that there's someplace to go. I couldn't get help when I was young. So how do we help people who were stuck in situations like I was? So those were the degrees I got. And I went right to graduate school because, I didn't really know. I started out as an artist, and it's funny now I am kind of back to my artist roots. I do think you have something to say about creation, I know, and I think creation is so important, but I was so invested in survival once again. I paid for myself, I had to make money, no one was supporting me, so I had to work. I had, so it was all about what job can I get and how can I be useful. And, I went right to graduate school and got a degree in social work and public policy, and then worked the next 36 years on huge things like universal medicine, Obamacare, on, revision of the welfare laws, like things to help people lift themselves out of poverty, because I felt like I had been stuck in that situation and I wanted to help others to be able to elevate.
Yeah, that's a powerful a journey. I recommend to anyone travel, especially a college individual, high school heading into college. Take some time and travel. Step out of your comfort zone, if you will. Go to a different country and mingle, and it'll change you forever. And I'm telling you, it should be a requirement, I think, with high school kids and stuff like that, and college kids. Some have them go somewhere. It'll open them. It makes you a little more empathetic. It opens you up and
Yeah.
makes you aware of other people's belief, culture, that not everything is perfect, if you will, and that there's hurt and pain out there that you can help and be a part of.
You and I talked a little beforehand about how we raised, how I have one daughter, how we raised our children and what values. And, one of the values for me and my daughter was always service.
Yeah,
Right.
same.
And it's funny because, you talk about worth and, the I ended up going to an Ivy graduate school because I felt like, oh, that's how I have to prove myself, right? Growing up with those worth issues, that not thread of enlightenment, let's call it thread of trauma, right? Like I'm not enough. So, oh, I have to get a degree from an Ivy League. Oh, I got to get 2 masters from an Ivy League. Oh, I have to teach at that Ivy League. You know what I mean? Like I was looking for something to validate me. In contrast, my daughter, and I think a lot about Eugene Lang, the philanthropist, he had this theory about that colleges don't, it's not about like what you're saying about the Ivy or this and that a college should be judged on, does every student take a trip abroad? Do they engage in service? Do they do a project, right? Like those are the real elements that we learn from, and then we can go out into society and do. So I agree with you. Living abroad, whether in high school or college, in a purposeful way, not, I've been on a lot of applications committees and scholarship committees and, admissions to universities. And, we joke about the paid save the elephant experience versus, the kid who is delivering, meals, in an inner city, walking up 6 flights of stairs to help elders open their rusty can of chickpeas, right?
Yeah,
Kind of thing, like what the difference of that value is.
yeah. That is. I know your work as far in the healthcare piece is noble as well. I worked in that arena, and to put something like that together, the work that it takes, and to make that a affordable healthcare to the masses, and the resistance that is, provided to you guys, and what you had to do in order to put that piece together. I was in healthcare at the time, and I read that policy, and I remember talking to people about it and how they were arguing with me about the policy. And I would look at them and I said, I can't argue with someone who doesn't know anything. I said, when you go read it, come
Yeah.
back. When you read it and you come back to me, we can have an educated conversation. But if you are not willing to read it, you cannot have an educated conversation. You're talking out of
Yeah.
your ass, I would tell them. But if
Yeah.
you can read it, we can have a really educated human conversation as to how it benefits and how it does not. Until then, just be quiet and you will enjoy it in a few years. I used to say it.
And, I say to people, I still say it to this day, that is America, right?
Yeah.
That we had to find a policy that would suit everyone, but states could choose. We had to find a policy that did everything, but
Hmm.
didn't have to do it. That's really the guts of America, and that healthcare policy. In doing that, we had to look at childcare policy, we had to look at the senior funding, we had to look at retirement funding, we had to look at Social Security, right? The way that one system intersects with all the others. It's, I agree with you. People think, oh, it's so easy, this or that. It's very, very complicated government and
Yeah,
policy work.
it
And
is.
so that is what I trained for, and that is what I worked in. it's now only being on the flip side, right?
Hmm.
20, 30 years later that I could say, wow, like being part of that debate, being, I worked in New York City, being someone who was feeding information to Congress, to the Senate, being a lobbyist wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing. I was lobbying for social service programs about who our clients are, what we need, how to put, a face to or numbers to the needs was really very noble work. And, going back to what you said before, it didn't determine my worth though, right? Because it was really, I was I was part of a group, I was faceless. But now that I look back on it, that was a huge role that I got to play in history that, isn't documented anywhere. I mean, probably is somewhere, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's really an honor to have been part of that movement.
Yeah, it's documented, but not where someone like the normal people would understand that it's not a part of that process. But it's documented. People know who, and it's part of, you're a part of the America history, if you will. And it's a
Big
great
thing.
place to be, So here's this woman that has made all this accomplishment. Let's talk about you, your personal growth. One of the things that I read that you said you wanted to talk to me is you wanted to talk about how you got out of your way. I read that and I was like, I got to talk to her.
Well, this is the topic of my newest book that, if I could get out of my own way to finish the edit and get it to the literary agent, I'd be in good shape. I
Yeah,
mean, I think another term for this, we use the term get out of our own way, but I
yeah.
think another term for this is self-constructed obstacles,
Hmm.
right? What we put in front of us that doesn't let us get there. And I think, I love the framework that you gave me, right? There's the self, there's this trauma that gives us this opportunity to be enlightened, to then be able to be interdependent with other people. And I think for me, I lived in that trauma way too long, right? There's an old saying that, they say it many ways, God whispers in your ear, taps you on your shoulder, throws a brick at your head.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you, in terms of getting out of my own way, how many times I thought, you know, what I thought was the brick was the whisper, right? Like I had to be, it's very interesting. I'm in the process of, whatever, doesn't matter. But, I've had, not as a joke, seriously, three, almost one of them death experiences, right? I had a very severe cancer when I was 39. I had a surgical infection when I was 53, and I had a heart attack several months ago. So I have been close to death several times. And when I say close, meaning in that moment when, they really don't know, are you going to make it? And, they're like, you're sitting in the room alone with yourself and your maker. And it took me till that last one. I mean, we could have had this interview 6 months ago, but it really, each time, what I thought was the brick, right?
Yeah.
The cancer, the surgical infection. Now the heart attack. The heart attack was the brick, because I finally get it that, like, you said before, some of our issues have expiration dates, and that getting out of our own way, like we sometimes can see where we want to go, but getting there is the problem, and letting go and learning to practice what's between what I thought and how I've acted and where I want to go. And that's the soul's journey, right? In the middle. How do I let go? And what I have found, if I can keep going, Ken, you want
Yeah,
to
go ahead. Go
interrupt?
ahead.
Or what I have found is, we started with it. It's the things that I end up laughing about that are the most important. The things, it's not like the big idea that family is important or society matters or people should be loyal, right? Like, okay, I'm programmed that way, but it's the little things, the way that I perseverate over my garbage, or how organized my kitchen is, or like that guy or that woman that passed me on the road, and I was going above the speed limit. How dare they, go around me on a double yellow? Like that could take me out of my whole day.
Yeah.
So it's those everyday actions that, were for lack of a better word, confirming or cementing those old patterns and not saying, I don't have to show up to every fight. I don't have to get off the track because someone did something nice for someone else. Why not me? So, it's the practice of getting out of my own way. It's the idea that, we talked about it before, and I can't remember if it was pre or on, that, people have got to want to change, right? It's the old light bulb joke, the
Yeah.
light bulb jokes.
Yeah.
How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb has got to want to change. But, it's really looking at those little behaviors that keep me stuck and keep me from missing the bigger picture,
Yes.
which is I want to show up differently.
Yeah. I had a similar story. I have a similar story. I died. I literally died. I sepsis. And I knew I wanted to leave the corporate field for a while, just like you. I saw a different picture. And I remember my sister had made a statement to me years before my incident took place. She said, "Why are you still here?" And that question would haunt me every day that I would go to work. Every morning I get up and I would go to work, put on my suit, get in my car, head to work. That one question would be haunting me all day long. Then one day I got sick. I was sick for a while, but I kept, we push on through, as they said. And I got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore and got to the hospital, and they said anything later, it would have been over. When the doctor came in, I was out. I remember laying there, and I told the nurse, I said, I think you guys need to get to me because something else is happening to me. I think I'm in trouble. And that was it. I blacked out. When I came to, they were wheeling me all over the place, and this doctor came in. She said, "You're awake. You're awake. We lost you a couple of times." And I looked at her. I said, "What do you mean exactly by lost?" She said,
But
"Yeah." She said, "We had to incorporate a couple of machines a couple of times." And I said, "What do you mean exactly by loss?" And then she told me,
do
she
you
said, "Mr.
remember
Primus,
those
you died."
moments? Do you remember those moments?
No, I didn't. I did not. And it was really fascinating. I was trying. She said, when you went out, we initiated right away. She said you were going out and then you flatlined, and then we started working right away. And I don't remember anything. And it was when I was in ICU for I think it was about a week and change. I'm laying there, and I made a decision. That's it, And I left. I got out of the hospital. Once I was discharged, I think I left the country about a week or so later, and I haven't turned back ever since.
Well, for all of our listeners, I am so visiting Ken in Thailand. If it's okay that I say you're there. Well, it's funny because I joke, I now live up in a very isolated, desolate area in Western Massachusetts. And, not after the cancer, I got divorced and realized, I had to lead a different life.
Yeah.
The second near-death experience is what brought me, right, same thing. It took me a good 3 or 4 months later, I moved out of the city and moved up into a very rural part of the country. And now this latest, you know, reminder of who of where my soul is supposed to go. It's not about leaving the country, but it is really finally about getting out of my own way.
Yeah.
Part of that is that value about what others think of me. We talked about like the whole idea of the thread of enlightenment is getting to know yourself. And the big part of that is the societal programming. What will they think of me? What college? Where did I go? Right? All of those things that we define as ourselves. So I think I'm finally turning that corner about, there's a saying, what others think of me is none of my business. But then I have to live that. Right? I have to live that. I can't get upset when someone says something negative. I can't get upset when someone does something for somebody else and not me. I can't worry about why I wasn't invited to a certain place. I have to know, going back to my core issue, that I am worthy because I exist,
Yes.
because I show up, because I'm engaged, because I care, because I laugh. That's it. That is the entire thing. And living that is getting out of my own way. And that is very, very hard to do because the old programming seeks in, the messages seek in, we do need money to live, in exchange for our housing, our food, our healthcare. So keeping on that lane of I am worthy because I am and I care and I contribute to the world and I try to make a difference is what I'm talking about when I say get out of my own way, instead of focusing on all the little things or all the ways that I sabotage myself or all the ways that I don't do my primary purpose because, let's be honest, I can help others, but how much of a rabbit hole am I going down with that person? And is that the person that needs help? So I've spent a lot of my life, as I said, from my childhood, running to people that weren't willing to get out of the trauma, and every time I thought, oh, I'm going to be the difference. This is my worth. It's going to be based on helping them. But that's not where they want to go. So that trip between, who I thought I would be and who I am, that's getting out of my own way. And the things that I've had to do, like let go of the value of what other people think of me, let go of my possessions,
Yes.
right? That doesn't matter what I have, what I drive, none of that matters. Learning to sit still within myself. Ken and I are going to connect about our meditation practices after this and how we ground ourselves, nothingness. That is something that, especially in America, we're not taught, right? Achieve, survive, do. So deprogramming that and really letting go of that stuff is about getting out of my own way.
Yeah, that's one of the gifts that the all of the mystics from all of the non-Western civilization, they focus and they have better insights than we do, because Western civilization is all about the things and the value of things. And when you look in all the other mystics and all those guys from India and Asia and all these things, they're telling you the enlightenment or the pursuit of things is not anything of who you are, because the soul doesn't care about a car.
Yeah.
The soul is not
The
important.
body might.
Yeah, the
soul
body
doesn't.
is. The soul doesn't care about, he's not interested in those material things that we chase. So then there's no value to him at all, and that's who you are. And so we have to learn how to be led by the soul and not led by the mind of the soul or the subconscious mind, and not be led by the mind of the body. And that's the difference, that the switching that we need to make to allow the soul to take the reign or the control of our thoughts versus the mind of the body taking control of the thought. And that is always the battle that we are in until we die, because again, the body is present with us. And so that exchange is a daily thing. And that's why they tell us we have to learn to live in the present. And the present, when we live in that, gives the soul the opportunity to be in charge versus the body or the mind of the
Yeah.
body being in charge. And so
And
it's a good balance that we have to learn.
yeah, and I think, the key thing that we keep talking about is that it's a choice.
Yes.
If you're interested in healing,
Yes.
it's not something I have to do,
Yeah.
it's something I get to do.
Yes.
That if I had enough of those experiences, enough bricks thrown at my head,
Mm-hmm.
and right, I have to be aware, awake enough, not using alcohol, drugs, money, work, all the things, sex, all the things we use to escape. If I am aware enough
Yeah.
that this is a message, then I have to take that step and move towards it. I have to actively let go. It does not just happen. It does
No.
not just happen. It is a very, and people, Ken and I spoke before and I listened to some of his podcasts, and people take all different paths, right?
Mm-hmm.
They work on their body, they work on their mind, they work on their physical space, right? They do all different things to get to this phase of letting go. So we all have to figure out what is it that's holding us so that we can elevate. But it is, it's one of the most simple things, but it's one of the most complicated things that we come to when we see how we are in our own way. And, I think about this thing, we learn so much, there's that old adage, it's not what we have to teach our children, it's what they have to teach us. And, we started with the family and, kind of the hysterical things that they instilled in me. And my daughter tells me about this meme going around internet going around this, and she says, it's this kid, and he says, I was so busy trying not to, replicate my parents' obvious,
Yeah.
beliefs that I forgot about the benign ones as he's washing out Ziploc bags and trying to dry them. You have to save Ziploc bags. But it's those things when you realize I'm saving Ziploc bags in my new book, which I think I'm coming to the point that I'm going to call the book Point.
Yeah.
Originally, it was How to Get Out of My Own Way, Conversations with Kathy, stories told about a quirky older woman, and these stories we talk about saving a coffee pod. I once spent half an hour trying to save, not to waste a 34-cent Keurig pad, right? Because how could I be so wasteful? Half an hour, putting it in the refrigerator, putting it in a different mug. I mean, throw out the stupid, right? Half an hour of my life. Add those things up. I'm spending a lot of time in my own way.
Yeah.
So I think the point of all of this is that it is those small, quirky, benign behaviors that when we can laugh about, if I could get outside of myself and see myself in the kitchen. First, I tried to save the coffee pot this way. Then I tried to save it for tomorrow. Then I put it in the refrigerator. Then it spilled on my new microgreens that I spent money on in the farmer's market. If I could look at all the stupid ways that I sabotage myself, then I can get out of my own way. And, it's one of those things that we always think, if I change, I have to, we talked a lot about beliefs in that programming, but those beliefs are displayed in my daily tasks or my daily actions.
Yeah.
And in my case, those daily actions, this is another one that I talk about. People tell me I should be ashamed. I'm like, I'm not. I would think you talk about being in corporate America and the grind, right?
Mm-hmm.
The grind. You needed to, to die several times before you said, oh, I got to get out of the grind. I think because of that grind, I took a shower the same way every day for 40 years, right? Rush in the shower, wash the hair. While I'm washing the hair, shave the underarms, rinse off, put in the conditioner, shave the legs, blah, 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 body, in and out in 5 minutes. There was only one way to take a shower. You had to be very efficient, right? While you did the shampoo, you did the underarms, while you did the conditioner, you did the legs, you washed the body, you're done. Now, I take a bath in the morning. Instead of waiting to the end of the day to unwind, I start my day in a nice, luxurious bath. And not getting too personal, I do not shave my legs and my underarms, you know what I mean? So, it's those daily patterns that we don't even realize that seem, when I get rid of the laundry, the this, the that, then I can go and do my life. No, it's I am doing my life while I'm doing those things. So how, like you said, in the present, am I approaching each of those things? Because one thing is for sure, we're going to wash ourselves every day. That's not a one and done. So how am I present and what happens in that moment? And how do I choose to honor my body and myself to keep that connection to what is my soul's journey?
Power of choice. That's how we create every day. And, I tell people we are creators, bar none. What do you want to create? That's
Peace. For myself, it's always about creating that peace and that serenity in my head.
Yeah.
And I hope to bring that to others that, you and I talked about a few words that mean so much. Peace is one that's overused, but I think belonging belongs in there. That sense of I'm in the right place at the right time with the right gifts. That, I talked about a lot of people want to make the journey. How do they get out of their own way? I want to create, a simple path, whatever they choose, whatever their practice is, to see this is how I get out of my own way. Choose your own meditation, whether it's your body, your soul, but know how to get out of your own way to move to that place of serenity and peace where you can really be present and focus on, those things about, being kind, being, having forgiveness, giving others value, that you can show up that way every day.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
I'd like to create that simple path that no matter what tools you use, that you're moving towards that higher state of serenity and being in that for me, it's a God space, right? That space where I exist and get to touch that is eternal.
That is a powerful image that one gets to be and to do, as you say, Eileen. And all you guys that are listening to our conversation, we'll provide everything for you guys to get to her because you need to. I mean, I love this conversation. It was so free flowing and insightful, packful with lots of imagery and power that you need to listen. I always tell people to learn how to transition from a listener to a hearer. Hearers change the world. Listeners just go and listen to another podcast. But someone that heard something will change their life and become impactful. So learn how to listen, but more importantly, learn how to hear something. And when you hear things, Jesus said, those who have ears, let them hear. So that means there's another part of you that needs to hear it, which is your subconscious being, and allow your soul to hear the conversation that we were talking about, because within it, it houses lots of wisdom and data that can change your life. And we know that we will provide all of her links so that you can get to her and talk. And you know how I feel about books, man. Within those books house wisdom, knowledge. And I always tell people, when you're reading, you have to come expecting something. You got to get comfortable. You got to get your cup of tea, your cup of coffee. You have to create your space. And when you do that, that means that you're having a one-on-one conversation with that author. And you expect something from that meeting. And when you come like that, trust me, you will get something from that encounter. And so
I
I'm
love
going to
that.
provide all
Coming
those
calm to learn.
links so that you can come and learn and engage and be affected and change your trajectory and your family, your friends, everyone that is around you. Because when you change, trust me, others around you notice, and then they'll ask questions, and then you have an
You say the
opportunity
butterfly effect.
to,
Little flutter, big change. Ripples.
Excellent. Eileen, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a good one, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.